Years ago, I severed the flexor tendon in my right thumb and lost all function of that hand for several months. At the time, it was just a frustrating inconvenience, but recently I started thinking about what would have happened if I had needed to defend myself or protect my family while my dominant hand was out of commission. And this isn't hypothetical. Statistically, there's a very real chance you'll injure your dominant hand, arm, or shoulder at some point in your life. And if this happens, not only are you forced to carry and shoot with your support hand, but you've also now introduced a disparity of force. You're injured, slower, less coordinated, and to a criminal, that may make you look like an easier target. This is when you're more likely to need a firearm, not less. So, for the last 30 days, I've trained my left hand and my left eye to see how quickly I could build real proficiency in drawing, reloading, and running the gun under pressure. And with less than an hour of practice per day, with some days only dedicating 10 to 20 minutes to practice. Intellectually, I knew what to do and understood the mechanics, but the mental wiring and myelination for my left hand was not nearly as developed as my right hand. So it honestly felt like I was both a coach and a student at the same time. I'll share the challenges I faced along the way, along with some screw-ups.
Oh my gosh, come on. I was doing fine a second ago until I hit the record on the camera.
And at the end of the video, you'll see footage of me competing in a match as a left-handed shooter. Now, I don't believe competition equals self-defense readiness, but if you're not even confident enough to compete casually, then that should be a wake-up call about your actual preparedness for self-defense with a gun. I'm also not saying that if you do compete, you are ready to use a gun in a real self-defense situation, or that competition translates directly to real-world application, because it usually doesn't. But my point is this: the level of competency and confidence required for competition is far lower than what's required for self-defense. And if you don't even meet that bar, it's something to think about, especially if you carry a gun to defend yourself or others. I also wanted to determine which dry fire training aid seemed to help the most with learning to shoot left-handed. I'll give you a quick hint about which one helped out the most. And finally, I wanted to test the effectiveness of my target-focused training program. So, spoiler alert, I'll be pitching the course because, like you, I've still got bills to pay. But first, let's go back to the start. On day one, I started out with what I call the thumbs up drill. To practice this drill, all you do is focus on an object across the room with both eyes open and bring the thumb of your dominant hand into view so that your thumb is between your dominant eye and the object. This drill doesn't even involve a gun. It's basically meant to help you learn target-focused aiming with both eyes open without the complexities of sight alignment and sight picture. If you do it correctly, you'll see two ghost-like thumbs. The reason this happens is due to something called eye convergence. When your eyes are converged on a point, which means that each eye is looking at a point, anything closer or further away from that point will appear doubled. This is the same effect you get when you cross your eyes because each eye is transmitting a different image to your brain. So when you are focusing on a target that is several yards away, your gun will appear doubled and almost see-through, or as I call it, the ghost gun effect.
This is a ghost gun.
For those of you who are right eye dominant, you'll use the left ghost thumb to cover up the object. And for those of you who are left eye dominant, you'll use the right ghost thumb. In this video, that object was just the lens of the camera. Notice how when I bring my thumb up, my thumb is covering up my left eye. I did hundreds of reps throughout the day until it became habitual. One thing I was worried about though was accidentally teaching myself to aim with my left eye while shooting with my right hand. So I also incorporated my typical training reps where I aimed with my right eye using my right hand. But I'm happy to say that after weeks of training, now I instinctively use whichever eye corresponds to the hand holding the gun. This could also be a takeaway for those who have cross-eye dominance. You can train yourself to aim with your non-dominant eye, and it's honestly not as hard as you may think. Shooting left-handed wasn't actually the most difficult part of this challenge. I've shot left-handed in training plenty of times. What was difficult was relearning all the basic weapons manipulations. Cycling the slide, locking it to the rear, press checks, reloads, all the stuff that's second nature with my right hand.
Getting the grip is getting a little bit easier, two-handed grip. I can shoot one-handed like this pretty easily. I mean, it feels far more natural. Then once this hand gets involved, I don't know if you guys have tried this before, but using your strong dominant hand as your support hand, it feels very strange.
After hundreds and hundreds of reps with the thumbs up drill, I started incorporating up drills with the gun, starting from the low ready and then bringing the gun up on target. And just like the thumbs up drill, I did this over and over for hundreds of reps. There's a lot of misconception about what it means to align your sights, or if you're running a red dot, to put the dot on the target. You shouldn't be fishing around trying to find the sights or the dot when the gun comes up. Now, of course, if you're new or training with your non-dominant hand like I was, you'll go through a period where you're building that proprioception. But the goal is to train until the sights are already aligned in the moment you reach full presentation. If you've ever played a first-person shooter game, this is basically what happens when you press the ADS or aim down sights button. The gun comes up and the sights are aligned and in view. So if you're still searching for the dot or your sights when you bring your gun up, you need a lot more dry fire drills. And a big shout out to the awesome team over at Dry Fire Mag for sending me a smart dry fire mag for this challenge. These magazines allow you to dry fire with trigger reset while using your actual gun, and I've probably used it more than any other training tool. They also include various springs in the kit so that you can match it to your actual trigger pull weight. This brings me to a very important side note. Anytime I do dry fire with a real gun, I use something that renders that gun inert. What I mean is I use something that makes it so that the gun cannot be loaded and cannot fire. That could be a barrel block, laser cartridge, cool fire trainer, or whatever. And if you're dry firing without something that makes it impossible to chamber a live round, you're being complacent and unsafe. Most of these devices take seconds to install and they prevent a negligent discharge, so there's absolutely no excuse. I also pair the smart dry fire mag with laser ammo, and it's great to use something like this with the Mantis Laser Academy, or just confirming your hits on an IDPA style target. I also incorporated training with the Ace VR using the Oculus headset. There's a little bit more expense and involvement with setting something like this up, but there's nothing that compares to the immersion you get with the Ace VR headset. Well, except live fire. Here's a visual example of what I'm seeing during target focus aiming with both eyes open in virtual reality. You'll notice the target is clear and in focus, but the gun appears to be doubled or ghost-like. That's because my eyes are converged on the target, not the gun. But despite that, I'm still able to align the sights between my eye and the target. And just for demonstration purposes, here's what it looks like with sight-focused aiming. As you can see, there's only one set of sights, however the targets in the background are doubled and now blurry. And while this may apply to Olympic-style bullseye shooting where the targets are not moving and they're not shooting back, this style of aiming is extremely dangerous in a self-defense context, which is why I'm a huge advocate for target-focused aiming. But enough about that, let's move on to weeks 2 and 3. Over the next couple of weeks, I trained my left hand and eye using a variety of training tools, gradually layering in reloads, malfunction clearances, and some basic movement drills. I was running a Glock 19 with standard controls on the left side, so learning how to hit the mag release and slide lock with my left hand was definitely a challenge. Around day 15, my holster and mag carrier from Bravo Concealment arrived. I began by drawing from open concealment, going slow and deliberate. My biggest concern throughout this challenge was making sure I didn't have some sort of a safety incident because I was going too fast. So I forced myself to slow down. There's a time to go fast, but when you're first learning to draw, that's not the time. Then I started adding reloads from open carry, using the barrel block follower inserts and laser cartridges to keep everything safe during dry fire. And then after a few days of open carry draws, I started working on concealment. And once again, I slowed things down again while developing those mechanics. Keep in mind, this was more than 15 days in and I still hadn't fired a single live round. And that's because dry fire is essential if you want to become proficient with a gun. Now let's move on to week 4. During the final week, I kept cycling through different training tools, but eventually made it out to the range for live fire on training day 26. This was the first time I had drawn from concealment using live ammo with my left hand, so I took it painfully slow, making sure that my right hand stayed indexed where it needed to be, and that my fingers stayed off the trigger until the gun was out on target. After a few dozen repetitions standing still, I then added movement. I first worked on keeping the muzzle downrange while moving from one position to another, as well as getting in and out of those shooting positions efficiently, always ensuring that my muzzle was oriented downrange. Then after that range day, I had 2 more days left to prep for the match. I spent that time back in dry fire, getting as much practice in as I could before the IDPA match. Most IDPA matches have several stages, and you get one chance per stage before rotating to the next. This first stage required you to shoot behind this mock-up concealment on the left side, avoiding the targets with the black hands, and you can't exceed past the little mark on the ground, and basically you just continue to pie around the corner and shoot each target. If you need to reload, you reload whenever your gun goes dry. I actually had an issue with my gun this night. Correction, not my gun, but my actual magazine. Because whenever I would reload, the slide would not go forward. And then you finally make your way to this piece of cover where you have to pie it around the right side, finish off the drill, and then after you're done with the drill, you unload and show clear.
Exactly right here. Clear.
And then after you're clear, everyone goes down range and checks targets.
0.
Now you hear 0, but 0 is good because that means you had no points subtracted. This next stage had 2 parts. One was further back and you were allowed to use a 2-handed grip, and then the next section was up front and you were required to only use your strong hand, which in this case, it was my weak hand. It's so painful to watch myself draw because I am obviously slowing down and really trying to make sure I don't do something unsafe. However, I guess if I had to pick between doing that and going too fast, I would pick doing that. So for this stage, you had to move up to a closer distance, and you were only allowed to use your strong hand. And you also had to only shoot the targets in the head. Ironically, this was probably the most comfortable I had been all night because shooting one hand with my left hand is much easier than obtaining a 2-handed grip.
Dad. Hey, good job.
Unfortunately, we didn't get recordings of the 3rd stage, so this is the 4th stage, the 4th and final stage. This first section of this stage required you to shoot one hand with your strong hand at these 3 targets, 2 shots each, before being able to add a second hand for a 2-handed grip. Running backwards in that direction gets a lot of people because they forget about the orientation of their gun, so that's why I practice those drills at the range right before going. You can probably tell that I sped up a little bit on this stage as it became more and more comfortable. And just like that, the match was over. Another funny thing about these matches is that they take about 2 hours. However, you only have a few seconds or minutes of shooting. But despite waiting around, the other shooters make really good company to hang out with while it's not your turn.
Thank you.
So now I want to talk about what I learned throughout this process and how it applies to new shooters as well as seasoned instructors. Well, that was fun. After this 30-day challenge, I definitely have a much better understanding of a few key things. First, learning to do everything with your support hand really does feel like starting over as a new shooter. So if you're an instructor, this is one of the best ways that you can reconnect with how it feels to be a new student, and in my opinion, it will absolutely make you a better teacher. Second, I got a clearer picture of what works and what doesn't when it comes to dry fire training tools. Because I definitely used the dry fire mag way more than anything else, and it was the easiest one to set up on a daily basis, and honestly helped me progress the fastest. And then third, I confirmed that you can train your non-dominant eye to aim effectively. So if you're cross-eye dominant, you don't have to be stuck that way. And I know you're wondering, so I'm gonna go over my match performance. But first, let me say that I'm not a practical shooting competition expert, and I only compete in a handful of matches per year in order to test my skills under pressure. And just like all sports, practical shooting is a game that caters to those who play that game more often and have perfected the strategies within that game. I'll probably do a future video on this and how treating a practical shooting match like self-defense training will limit your ability to progress within the sport. Though I still stand by my claim that the confidence required to compete in a match pales in comparison to the confidence required to defend yourself with a gun. But with all that being said, shooting in this match with my left hand, I placed 33rd out of 47 shooters, compared to my typical match performance where I placed somewhere in the top 10 to 20. So overall, my performance in this match shooting left-handed was not great. However, I think it was pretty good considering I'd only been training with my left hand for 30 days. And then finally, these 30 days also validated my target focused training program. Using the principles and drills from that course, I was able to build usable performance without ever having to rely on front sight focus. You can scan this QR code or click the link in the description and check it out. The course will teach you target focused aiming in only 3 days. And then you'll get instant access to our full 30-day training program, plus access to our weekly live virtual meetings where you can meet me and ask questions about the course. And for my subscribers, I'm giving you a 25% discount. So if you want this discount, then hit the subscribe button down below and then use this promo code. Now, if you're wondering how I can tell or verify whether or not you're actually subscribed when you use that code, well, the truth is I can't. It's the honor system. Because you guys would never lie to me, right? No, but seriously, whether or not you buy the course or not, I hope this video motivated you to take the challenge for yourself. Because if you ever have to rely on your support hand to defend your life or the lives of the people you love, you will not rise to the occasion. You'll fall to your level of training. So do yourself and those you love a favor and train to a higher standard.